The officers' lounge at Fort Sterling Military Base was a fortress of polished oak and clinking glasses where senior officers gathered to unwind. On a crisp autumn afternoon, their laughter roared, shaking the crystal chandeliers. At the center of their amusement stood 12-year-old Amara Wilson, her small frame dwarfed by the towering figures around her. Her braided hair was neat, her posture rigid, mimicking the military discipline her father, Sergeant Isaiah Wilson, had drilled into her. Around her neck hung his silver star, a bittersweet weight that reminded her why she was here. Colonel Victor Grayson, a man with a reputation sharper than his pressed uniform, leaned back in his leather chair, his gray eyes glinting with mockery. "You want to use our shooting range?" he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "What's next, kid? Leading a tank division?" The room erupted in laughter, majors and captains joining in, their whiskey glasses trembling on the table. Amara's hands tightened around the yellowed envelope she held, a letter from her father, written before his final mission 3 years ago. "Sir," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest, "today marks the 3rd anniversary of my father's death in combat. He taught me to shoot, and I'd like to honor him by practicing at the range." Grayson's laughter boomed louder, his hand slamming the table. "Did you hear that, gentlemen? She thinks she's a sharpshooter." Major Ellis snorted, muttering, "Kids should stick to crayons." Captain Reed added, "Go play with your dolls, sweetheart." Their words stung, but Amara stood firm, her father's lessons echoing in her mind. "Stand tall, Amara. Let your actions speak." What the officers didn't know was that Isaiah Wilson wasn't just any soldier. For 7 years, he'd been the base's unspoken legend, a marksman whose skills were whispered about in barracks but never recorded in official logs. Every weekend, he trained Amara in a secluded clearing, teaching her to read the wind, control her breath, and fire with precision. After his death, Amara made a vow at his grave, under the shadow of an American flag. She would become the shooter he believed she could be. Grayson stood, his imposing figure casting a shadow over Amara. "This range isn't a playground, kid. Guns aren't toys." His voice was a blade, meant to cut her down. "But since you're so stubborn, let's make it interesting. Hit 4 out of 10 targets at 60 meters, and I'll sign your permission slip. Fail, and you promise to stop wasting our time with these fantasies." Amara's heart raced, but her face remained calm. "I accept, sir," she said, her voice carrying a quiet strength that made a few officers pause. Grayson's smirk widened. "Gentlemen, to the range. Let's watch this lesson in humility unfold." As they marched to the firing range, the officers' taunts followed Amara like a swarm of bees. "She'll cry before the first shot," Captain Reed whispered. "Bet she can't even lift the gun," Major Ellis chuckled. Amara ignored them, her mind focused on the promise she'd made to her father. The Fort Sterling range was a dusty expanse framed by pine trees, its targets glinting under the afternoon sun. Staff Sergeant Lena Carter, a veteran who'd served with Isaiah, watched from the sidelines, her expression unreadable. She knew Isaiah's reputation and his daughter's potential. Years ago, she'd made a quiet pact with Amara, opening the range at dawn for her secret practice sessions. For 3 years, Amara had trained relentlessly, her father's Glock 17 becoming an extension of her will. Grayson gestured to a table lined with standard-issue firearms. "Pick your poison, kid. Try not to drop it." The officers snickered, but Amara's fingers moved with purpose, selecting the Glock 17. Her movements were fluid, almost mechanical, checking the magazine, clearing the chamber, testing the trigger. Sergeant Carter's eyes widened. She'd seen those motions before, in a soldier long gone. "She's got some tricks," Grayson scoffed. "Let's see if they're worth anything." 10 shots, 60 meters, go. Amara stepped to the firing line, her small frame steady against the weight of a dozen mocking stares. She closed her eyes, just for a moment, hearing her father's voice. "Find the silence between your heartbeats, Amara. That's where the shot lives." When she opened her eyes, the nervous girl was gone, replaced by a focused force. The first shot cracked through the air, sharp and clean. Before the echo faded, the second followed, then the third. The rhythm was relentless, each shot precise, like a metronome set to perfection. The officer's laughter faltered. Sergeant Carter, peering through binoculars, muttered under her breath, "She's better than Isaiah." By the fifth shot, the range was silent, save for the metallic ping of bullets striking the target's center. Grayson's smirk vanished. Major Ellis shifted uncomfortably, whispering, "She's just lucky." But luck didn't explain the sixth, seventh, or eighth shots, each hitting the bullseye with surgical accuracy. For the 10th shot, Amara paused, adjusting her stance to account for a faint breeze. The final shot rang out, and she lowered the Glock, engaging the safety with a flick of her thumb. 10 shots complete, sir," she said, her voice calm but unyielding. Sergeant Carter approached the target, her binoculars trembling slightly. When she turned back, her face was a mix of awe and disbelief. "Colonel, you need to see this." Grayson snatched the binoculars, his hands unsteady. What he saw shattered his arrogance. 10 shots, clustered so tightly they formed a single perfect hole in the target's center. It was the kind of precision that made seasoned snipers sweat. This is impossible," he stammered. "The equipment must be faulty." One by one, the officers checked the target, their confidence crumbling. Captain Reed's jaw dropped. Major Ellis muttered, "25 years, and I've never seen a grouping like that." Carter stepped forward, her voice carrying across the range. "Miss Wilson, your father would be proud. This isn't just skill. It's a new benchmark for this base." Grayson's face reddened, the weight of his mistake sinking in. He'd mocked the daughter of a war hero in front of witnesses, and she'd outshot every soldier under his command. The soldiers watching began to whisper, some pulling out phones to capture the moment. This story wouldn't stay quiet. Carter approached Amara, her tone respectful. "Would you consider a demonstration at 250 meters? Amara's eyes lit up. "Let's make it 300, Sergeant." As new targets were set, the crowd grew, soldiers, veterans, even a base staff drawn by the buzz. Amara fired again, hitting a coin-sized target at 300 meters, then 400. By 500 meters, using only iron sights, her shots were still dead on. Veterans wiped tears from their eyes. A grainy video of the event, uploaded by a soldier, went viral, amassing 50 million views in days. Girl 12 humiliates arrogant colonel. 6 months later, Amara Wilson was no longer just a girl. At 13, she became the youngest member of the Army's Young Marksman program, wearing a silver badge that gleamed with pride. The range was renamed the Isaiah Wilson Memorial Range, a plaque commemorating Amara's triumph. Colonel Grayson faced a military inquiry. Testimonies from families revealed his pattern of bias, leading to his demotion and transfer to a remote outpost in Montana, where he shuffled paperwork under the command of officers he'd once belittled. Major Ellis and Captain Reed were reprimanded, their careers stunted by their role in the incident. Amara thrived. Elite academies offered scholarships, and she began mentoring young recruits, under Sergeant Carter's guidance. Her story inspired thousands, especially young girls from marginalized communities, who saw her as proof that no barrier was too high. On weekends, Amara visited her father's grave, no longer whispering promises but sharing victories. "We showed them, Dad," she'd say, smiling. "We showed them all." In a televised interview, Amara was asked if she resented Grayson. Her answer was simple but profound. "He gave me a chance to prove him wrong. Sometimes the people who doubt you the most push you to shine the brightest." Amara Wilson turned prejudice into power, humiliation into history. Her story reminds us that true strength lies not in tearing others down, but in rising so high that your light drowns out their shadows.